a bit of context. Think New Concepts was really created to showcase people like Alex, extraordinary people, normal people that have done exceptional things in their lives, and they're regular people like you and I. And I really want to showcase that really anything is possible as long as you have the right mindset. So Alex, I don't know if you want to go ahead and start. We can kind of go over a little bit of your background and where your journey started.
So my name is Alex Nagy. I've been doing this for a little while now. I would say, my main focus and the reason that I was willing to, more than willing, but, willing to meet with Natalie as far as basically telling my story and having an outlet to not only tell my story, but help other people and, share what helps me and what has helped me get to where I'm going in life. I haven't always been in the position I'm in today. There was not only, I had a few things along the way that caused things to be, I guess, for lack of a better term, difficult. So basically, I guess we can start with, I'll just give you like a brief summary of, what things were like, what happened, and what they're like now. And then, my views, basically what I focus on a regular basis that keeps my perception higher to keep me focused and keep me in line. And when Natalie got a hold of me as far as, the whole Think New Concepts, that's amazing because it's difficult to find people nowadays who realize that mindset is 90% of everything we do. So I didn't always have the mindset I have today. I currently, I'm building a financial education. We call it basically a Broken Dreamers resource center, because that's who I was for years. I was, ever since I was a kid, I was a dreamer, and I always had these big dreams. I had a big imagination, and as I got older, that imagination kind of dwindled because I got into real life. I was 16, I think, when I had my first real, we'll call it real. I worked at a restaurant. I worked at a Jimmy John's sub restaurant for like a month, and I hated it. And that was my first experience of, well, let's put it this way. As a kid, I wasn't ever really good at listening to authority either. So I didn't like people telling me what to do. I didn't like having a boss. I didn't like doing something for somebody else that involved being paid minimum wage, for one. Two, nobody I worked with was enjoyable to be around. And I always knew that I wanted better. And that vision was amplified when I got a future wife and a daughter. So, at that point it became not so much about me anymore. It was, okay, look, not only did I want better and I put my views aside for quite some time, but now I need to make sure that I provide for my girls. And that's, I would say, without them, my wife's not here right now, but at some point in time, I'd like to introduce you guys to her because she is a big part of why I am where I am today. And yeah, I say wife, we're not married yet. I'm actually currently in the process of getting all that set up. So she's still technically my fiance.
Alex, if you don't mind, we so that we can kind of give them a little bit more context.
Yeah.
You got into some trouble as a kid, as an adolescent. If you want to give a couple of examples of the kind of things that you were doing and where that led you, which a big part of your story is that you were homeless at one point. So I want to kind of go into what happened before and then what led you there.
Definitely, yeah. It all kind of started, like I said, when I was younger, I was a dreamer, and I've always been a dreamer. I always had a big imagination. So I would tend to take the non-traditional route. I was probably 13, 14 when I was always running around with older kids. And that kind of pushed me to, I always wanted to be older because I felt like there was more freedom, more opportunity, the older that I felt, so that kind of ended up pushing me to, I got in the streets and I got around people who were selling drugs, and I got around people who were doing things that, whether they were illegal or just wrong. I saw an opportunity to make money in a way that was, I had never seen before. I'm growing up, and I found ways to make money that were not traditional, but to me it was, okay, this is the way I can make money to live the lifestyle I want to live. That was the vision anyway. So now for the next several years, I didn't live the life I wanted to live. I ended up becoming a victim to my own vice. We'll put it that way. I struggled with addiction. I struggled with, I was in and out of trouble. And basically, I had a lot of issues with my parents, and, my parents split up when I was younger. So I was back and forth all the time. A lot of that played in, but that was when I was way younger. But I was real bitter. I was a real bitter, angry kid. And, so my outlet was not very, everybody was said, you need to get into sports. You need to do something. I skateboarded and I did BMX and stuff like that. But, once I found this means of, okay, this can help me make the kind of money I want to make. And I felt like an adult, I felt more like an adult because I felt more in control of my life. Felt like I had more freedom. Little did I know everything I was doing was going to take away my freedom. So that's what happened. Like I said, I was in and out of trouble. I was just real lost. I couldn't find my way. And the only thing that kind of made me feel normal was this way of basically working for myself. For lack of a better term, I was working for myself. I was self-employed, and I became this, so from 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So all throughout, middle school and high school, I was basically, I was that go-to guy. If anybody wanted anything, I could find it. And that was, I was infamous in a sense. I made that sour name for myself. And what that did was basically put in a circle around me of people who, a bunch of acquaintances per se. So my network was not good. So as I got older, like I said, I started to realize, like, okay, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I need to do something different here. And my team was absolutely terrible. I mean, I didn't have, I'm big on teamwork, and that's something I value today. That's something I have a solid backing in today. But at the time, I didn't have, like I said, I had acquaintances. I didn't have any solid team network. I didn't have anything that would really push me to do greater. I had a bunch of people around me trying to pull me down, and that was something I had to change. So, like they say, people, places, and things was something I had to change.
What do you think was the lowest point?
The lowest point, I would say, probably, when I was on my own and I had my own downfall. That was one thing. I was about 21 when I met my fiance, and we kind of just, it was a Bonnie and Clyde situation. We kind of just took off together, and so there was love involved, but it ultimately, I wasn't watching myself self-destruct anymore. I was watching the woman I love self-destruct, and that was real eye-opening to me because, not only did I see myself, I knew what I was doing, but I would block it out on a regular basis. Now, when I saw her with me right alongside me every day, all day, that really opened my eyes, and I knew I wanted different. And so I would actually start pushing for it. But I was so low down on the ladder that I didn't really have a means of climbing out. I did, but I didn't know it yet. So I would say the lowest point on that is when she got arrested, and I think at the time, crazy situation, we were living at her grandmother's house. oddly enough, we had, you know, manipulated her into letting us stay there at the time, and so she got arrested, and I was kicked out nonetheless, and so I was homeless. About a week or so later, she had gotten out of jail, and um, basically that was when we found out we were having a baby. So this was like my entire life had just kind of caved into a pitfall, and then there was this one little piece of hope, like, okay, you have something, you know, this was kind of my moment. You know, I'm not religious by any means, but that was my moment to where my higher power was saying, okay, there's something greater for you, and here's your opportunity. You can either run with it, or you can continue to screw your life up, as you know, along with several others, and you know, a child that doesn't have the opportunity to, you know, you can basically take their opportunities away as well. So that was definitely my kind of lowest point, and at the same time my turning point. So, you know, I hit the bottom, but I could look up and see the light. So that was about the time that we started to get our act cleaned up, and you know, I quit doing the things I was doing to make money. I quit selling drugs. I quit running the streets and running scams and all the other crazy, you know, I always had this mindset of being my own boss, being self-employed, but I never, you know, like I said, I was a victim to my own vice. So that was, I was my own worst enemy. And I still believe to this day, if I don't keep my mindset the way it is, I will continue to be my own worst enemy. Excuse me. So
What were the tools or the things that you had to put in place, both in a physical matter and mentally, so that you can continue on this new path that you're heading?
the tools I had to put in place, I'm going to summarize here because I could go on for days. The main things that I focus on, and I say to this day, anytime I talk to somebody, because, you know, my whole teamwork, I'll start with that. Teamwork is big. My whole network now is, I mean, I can't even explain how different. Let's put it this way: when I got started, you know, I started a job at Taco Bell. I mean, just because, you know, we had a baby on the way, and I knew, like, okay, we gotta get something going here. I gotta get some changes going. I gotta get some money in our pockets. So I was literally sleeping on the streets, riding a 10-speed bike to Taco Bell, working third shift, going and visiting my soon-to-be wife on house arrest while she's pregnant. I mean, I can't explain the absolute craziness of the situation. So I had to start changing my views, and in doing that, I pretty much canceled. I mean, yeah, it was a whole lifestyle change. So I canceled all the people I had around me. So I changed my team. My focus was continuously growing. I had, you know, like I said, the lifestyle change. I mean, it was like a process over time. I continuously had to change my ways. I got rid of anybody around me. I pretty much canceled anything out of my contact list. I mean, I pretty much just ran under the radar for months and months and months. I mean, you know, and that helped me a lot, because the only people that I saw was the people who, you know, were on my team. It was my lady, and you know, really that was it. It was us for the longest. You know, we kind of just did our own thing, and we built each other, you know, from square one, ground zero. So that was my team at the time. That was my team, and you know, that was my sidekick. And that was all we had. We were all each other had. And we continuously, you know, we bounced around living at other people's houses, you know, just trying to stack money up, trying to get our own place. I mean, it took us, boy, you know, on top of bills. And I mean, we finally got a car. You know, I remember at the time, my father and I didn't even talk. And I had actually started showing changes enough to where he paid for us a little $400 car to where we could just get back and forth to work. So that was like a big moment for me. So teamwork is big. And for me, law of attraction is a huge thing. So, you know, I had to completely change my views. It didn't matter how bad of a day I was having. I would actually have to push through it. I mean, I can't tell you how much of a struggle we had. Just some days, I swear, like everything was going wrong because we didn't have any resources. You know, it's like trying to mine gold without a pickaxe. I mean,
Right.
we didn't have any tools at that time. We had to create and build our own tools. Um, you know, everywhere I went, I talked to people. I would tell, you know, I briefly just tell people my story. I don't care if it was at work or, you know, anywhere we went. And I would network with people because I know all I knew growing up was, okay, if I network with people and I find people who want what I have, I'm going to make money and I'm going to survive today and I'm going to eat today and I'm going to have a place to sleep today. I was a drifter for years. You know, I had a backpack and a few $100s and and that was my life. You know, a change of clothes and whose couch am I sleeping on tonight? And then so, you know, when it became me and my fiance, you know, I had to change some things. I was providing for both of us, but I had to, you know, not to get off track here, but I really had to change my views and realize everything I view has to be positive, even if it's not, because if I don't, I'm never going to attract those things that I want, those things that I need. So I started to network with people and basically understood that, okay, let's take this negative aspect that I used to use. You know, I networked with people for the wrong reasons. Let's network with people for the good reasons now. And that was, you know, they say your network is your net worth. And that's, you know, I never understood that until I realized, like, hey, I can put these skills, as we'll call them, to good use, because I had done something for so many years that I had gotten good at it, but I didn't know how to use it in the right way.
And
And
it
I got
sounds
good at
like
talking.
you always had the same, I would say, mental structure in the way that you went about things. But who were you in the past that had these sets of tools, I would say, and then who did you have to become that completely shifted the way that you started applying the way that you viewed life and the way that you networked people and the way that you connected?
So the person I used to be, um, I wasn't really trusted. You know, I mean, I had, yeah, I mean, I pretty much burned all my bridges. You know, I would go through phases where I would try to do better. I would try to. I mean, I wasn't really concerned about anybody but myself because in my mind, nobody else was concerned about me. But little did I know, I wasn't really giving anybody a reason to be concerned about me. So therefore, you know, just over the course of like, I think from like 18 to, what was it? I'm 24 now. I was like 18 to 20, you know, 18 to 21 maybe. I was, you know, it was just a slow downfall. Let's put it that way. You know, I may be doing good for a period of time, but I didn't really, I didn't really make any progress over that time. If anything, I barely maintained. So I burned my bridges. You know, I was a bad influence. Let's put it that way. I was just not somebody good to be around.
And who did you become?
So who did I become? The opposite. You know, I always wanted to help people, but I didn't know how to help myself. So in turn, I had to figure out how to help myself in order to be able to help other people. You know, so nowadays, what I did when I created Forward Solutions was for, it was basically a means of me creating an opportunity, a foundation, a resource um, for broken dreamers, you know, failed dreamers, people who lost their hope and maybe needed that leg up like I did because, you know, I think I could write a list of the people who were actually there and maybe even just, I don't care if you gave me a ride to work one day when I was struggling, you know, I mean, I was, the amount of people, even if they were just acquaintances or people I met along the way, those were people who changed my mindset along the way and sparked me to do better and to end up, you know, saying, hey, look, if I can do it, anybody can, because I knew that I wanted to get where I was going, but I didn't necessarily know how I was going to get there. I just knew as long as I keep pushing and don't give up. Those are the three things I focus on nowadays. Is stay patient, no matter what, stay patient. Find a healthy focus. I say an obsession, you know, like I said, I struggled with addiction. So like I always know I'm going to have that mindset. So what I do now is I focus on a healthy obsession. And that for me is creating a more comfortable life for my family. And, you know, that has to do with financial education, and we'll get into that. But, and then the third thing is, you know, don't give up. And that's the biggest thing. So patience, focus, and don't give up. And I continued through with those three things for the last couple of years. And those are the things that really put me where I'm at, and keep me going. You know, complacency is a killer. If I, you know, there's another thing that some of you may not know is, so my first stab at, you know, actual owning my own company and not, you know, running the streets selling drugs. Well, you know, when I actually said, all right, I'm gonna stop these 9-to-5 jobs that are not paying my bills. I can't get ahead. I can't save any money. And I had a basic grasp of financial education, but nothing like what we should have in school today. What I did was I went out and my daughter was like 2 months from being born. And I didn't even have my license at the time. I went out and walked the neighborhood and started knocking on people's doors. And, you know, I had always had a basic grasp of like, you know, home remodeling, home improvement, renovation, stuff like that. So I went out with my brother and we started knocking doors, and I think I had a drill and a hammer. I didn't think I had a drill. I had a hammer and a measuring tape. I mean,
Okay.
I was faking it till I made it. So, and I went out and knocked doors, and I basically said, you know, hey, how you doing? My name's Alex. I run a home improvement company. You know, we're just getting started out. Seeing if you guys need any work done in your home today. And that was how I built my business. You know, I started from doing that to, you know, now I've all my advertising's online. I've got a solid crew that works for me now. You know, solid guys. And it took me a long time to actually find some people that I could have work for me. You know, for the longest I did everything on my own. I started the company with my brother, and he, let's put it this way. He left me in the middle of a job site, basically went back and got strung out and then moved out of state. So I was left to my own devices, and I didn't give up. You know, like I said, at this point, my daughter had just been born, so I didn't give up. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have an option. This was my means of providing for my family. So I continued to market. I continued to advertise. I continued to give business cards out, put flyers out. I remember my first flyers were handwritten. I wish I had one to show you now. You'd be like, wow, that's crazy. Did you really get work from those? Like, yeah, I did. I did. Not good paying work and not high quality customers, but
But it was a good way to
that
start.
was how I built. Exactly.
Yeah.
I had literally went to Kinko's with a Sharpie, handwritten on like a green piece of paper, you know, cardstock, printed out as many copies as I could afford. It was like $50, the last $50 to my name. And I just went and put them out all over the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, a week later, I got several calls from those. And that was, you know, a lot of things along the way showed me like, okay, you know, even if I fake it till I make it, like I have good intentions, and I feel like that is, you know, whatever you believe in universally, you know, you have good intentions and good things will come. And I wasn't, you know, everything I was doing that was negative, I quit doing, you know. I don't care, you know, I always used to be, you know, against the guys on the standing on the freeway who would ask for change. I start giving them change, and,
Yeah.
you know, I don't care what they do with it. I helped, you know. It's like that was me. That was my form of, you know, helping out, whether he goes to get a hotel room or whether he goes to spend it on drugs. It's out of my hands. So, you know, basically after I got the home improvement company going, you know, that was after things started getting a little more steady. I got back into something that was always big to me is, you know, and also at the time I had my daughter at home with me. My fiance went back to work. I was self-employed, so it was kind of more like I had more freedom to, okay,
Stay with
I can
her.
either get a babysitter and I can go do these jobs. You know, at the time I was doing everything. I was doing all the marketing, I was doing all the sales, all the client relations, all the quotes, and all the work. So, I mean, a lot of long nights and early mornings. So, and, you know, I was killing myself. It got hectic. So, and you know, it caused a lot of strain on our relationship, my lady and I. And so I finally had to break down and say, all right, I'll give somebody else a shot, because I need somebody else to help me with this work, because, you know, it was getting, I was moving forward, but I was kind of standing still because I didn't have somebody else to help me. I was so nervous about trusting somebody else to represent my name.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was a big thing. So that was when I started looking into other options of, working from home. And ultimately, I wanted to be able to own my company and not have to basically do everything. So
And that's
I branched
also
out.
the perfect segue, I feel, for maybe the idea that you had of how you use the money that you are now gaining or earning, because you definitely worked hard to
Yeah.
to gain any money and to sustain your business and to sustain your family and your home. So what was your perception at that moment of the income that was coming in, especially since you came from being homeless, from drifting, from that to establishing your own business? Where was your idea of money at that point?
My idea of money, and this is the whole focus of this, and I say financial education and entrepreneurship saved my life because, along with my girls, um, growing up, I knew money was like, okay, I always hated the idea of currency, thousands of years ago, or even, Native Americans, they trade and barter, we didn't have a form of currency at the time. Growing up, I learned, okay, the day and age that we live in, man created currency. We created, whether it's a coin or a piece of paper, we created something that we put value on. And now this thing with value is what we have to give to other people in order to be comfortable in life, in the society we live in today's day and age. So I understood, okay, at the time I was taught, like, I hated money. I still really, I put it this way, money can be, I hate relating it to guns, but it's kind of similar because, it only has value. It only has the power that we give it. Guns don't kill people. People kill people with guns. It's the same thing with money. Money can do great things, or it can be the demise. I mean, Mike Tyson wrote in his book that he made like $4 million and blew it all. I mean, he had no financial concept of how to manage any of that. And growing up, I had the same view. I knew, like, okay, I need to make money. I need to make as much as possible, and I need to save it. I didn't know what I was saving it for. I didn't have a plan. Now, today, I mean, I fill this thing up because I write everything down. I have a plan to everything I do because, I was in the system for years, but systems also saved my life because I used those systems to my advantage. I realized, okay, so, man created currency, basically, or governments created currency to basically control, a certain population, per se, so we can either become victim to that, we can settle, we can choose to be poor. And I say choose because I've been there. I was going to be poor for the rest of my life, broke, struggling. I mean, lights cut off, eating ramen noodles. I mean, that was my future, So I knew this was my choice to make my destiny what it is. And basically, I put in my perspective that, okay, I'm going to choose to make this something positive. I am going to dominate this thing man calls currency so that I don't ever have to worry about it again. Financial stress has always been an issue, and I hated it. I hate having to worry about money. I hate having to worry about, are the bills going to get paid? Am I going to be able to save up for this? Or, am I going to be able to save up for my wedding? Am I going to be able to save up for this car or this house or, build a business? Whatever your goal is, whatever your goal is, it's achievable because, whether it takes a day or 10 years, that money it's possible to create that, And my fiance will tell you, I mean, in the beginning, I saved everything. I mean, we didn't go out, we might go low on groceries. I mean, we survived and we stayed afloat, but I saved everything because, it was my first time like actually owning a business. So I knew, okay, I'm going to have to pay taxes soon. I'm going to, I have to pay I'm paying myself. So, as much as people think, when you own your own business, I've had guys who work for me who, ended up getting greedy after they got their first check, and we had to part ways because they didn't know how to manage their money. So they came back to me like, hey, we need to renegotiate price. Really, it was the fact that, hey, you need to learn how to manage your money because, I don't profit as much as people think I do. There's a lot of expenses involved. So my view of money changed when I realized, okay, so I was a kid in high school, basically an addict selling drugs, saving money. So it was like a weekend savings plan. I was just saving for the weekend. I wasn't, it never went any further than that. And it was like, I was chasing my own tail. I tried for so many years to save, but it just, it never happened. So then when I got my act cleaned up and I actually started developing this better source of income, when I realized, okay, working for somebody else and this hourly concept, spending my time for money, that's one thing, but spending, basically providing value and solving a problem and the difficulty of that problem solved, putting a price on that, you look at Robert Kiyosaki has a business model. It's basically, it shows people who are employed, self-employed, business owners, and investors. So 95% of the population makes 5% of the money. 5% of the population makes 95% of the money. That's crazy. I mean, so 5% of the population is making more money than most of the population,
and 95%,
because they figured out that middle class is basically, we're settling. That's why I've never been a settler. I realized that, okay, I have the potential to do this. It's just going to take me some time and some self-education. I started teaching myself these things that I needed to learn.
Can you
So
walk through some of the things that you learned?
Yeah. So probably one of the biggest things was learning that, as much as I was for saving, I needed to start investing. And that was when everything changed. I had money saved, but it wasn't really doing anything. It was sitting in the bank and it ended up getting spent later on. If I didn't, what I had to learn was, okay, I need to continue bringing in income and at the same time putting some of that aside so that I continue to build. So the two keys are continue to bring in money and continue to put some aside. Because it doesn't matter if I bring it, you have to have two parts of the equation. If I bring it in and I don't do something with it, it's going to get spent on bills or, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So do you put aside and spend the same amount of money, or do you have a certain percentage?
Basically what I do, I usually, it varies, depending, my expenses go up and down all the time. New stuff comes in all the time. Insurance is crazy as an owner. So what I do is usually I put aside at least 30%. So, okay, so you have 100%. Say you get $1,000 check. What I do is I take 30% of that and I set it aside. Tai Lopez is actually where I got this business model. I put 30% aside, put 30% into 30% in savings, invest 30%, and then take 30% for, I did that wrong, 30% savings, 30% invest, and your remaining is what you use for bills.
Okay.
And then, he recommends like 10%, like it doesn't matter if you have $100 or $1,000 or $1 million, you should always donate. Basically, the more you give, the more you get back.
Yeah.
That's something I've started to instill. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but it's definitely something, even if you give $1, it's something you're putting back into the system what was given to you, basically, in my eyes. So, I started to learn this financial management, and I realized, I can save all this money forever, but what if I put this money to use? What if I can learn how to make money with my money? And when I learned how to do that, I mean, you talk about owning a business, that was great. That was something that completely, got us through hard times and helped me build a foundation. But what I would start doing with that money that I was making, instead of saving it, I'd invest it. So there's, basically our two biggest markets in the world right now, and they're highly volatile, which, any type of investing has risk to it. But, I started getting involved with a group of guys who, and a team of people who've been doing this for years. And, basically it's calculated risk. It's structured risk. So, I can go gamble on a lottery ticket, or I can put some of my money into Forex. And Forex market is, the world's currency exchange market. It's a $5.3 trillion industry every day, I believe. I mean, it's the biggest business in the world. So that's basically how the banks make money off our money when we put money in. And then we get our little pennies on the dollar every year. So I started investing in the Forex market, the highly controversial cryptocurrency market.
What would you consider a calculated risk versus a non-calculated risk?
Basically, so without diving into Forex deep, because then we'll be here for another several hours, there's different ways to, basically, if I stick with my strategy, I'll do well. Now, if I just dive in and say, all right, I'm going to risk $20 in hopes of making 100, but I may lose that, it's hard to explain. Basically, when you invest in Forex, you use leverage. So it's kind of like putting a deposit down. It's like me saying, here, I'm going to give you $10,000 if you let me use 100,000. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's kind of like it's a ratio. There's a risk to reward ratio, but you're really only risking a percentage of that, and that percentage is what you can calculate. So,
and do they pay you on the total value or your entry value?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do they reward you on the total value or your entry value? So if you're entering with 10%, but they're giving you access to 90, 100%, then if it goes well, do you get rewarded on the full pie or just your pie?
That's a good question. So depending on the trade, say we'll just use an example here. Say I have a $100 account, I risk 1%. Now, if I'm only risking 1% of that account, but I have the potential to make 10% off of that 1%, I'm basically being rewarded for that specific trade, but I'm gaining 10% on my full account. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's complex, and I continue to learn more and more about it every day. I mean, I do like 3 live sessions a week, live trading sessions that, with my mentor. That's another big thing. Mentors are great, man. I don't care what you do. Mentors are phenomenal. You should always have somebody who knows more about what you're doing than you. Yeah. And, somebody who's continuously learning and willing to teach. To answer your question, you are gaining reward on your entire account, but you're only using a percentage of your account to gain that. Does that make sense?
I think we lost you for a second there. Can you repeat that?
So, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, to answer your question, basically, if I spend 1% of my account and I'm gaining 10%, I'm gaining that 10% on my full account by only using a percent of my account. Does that make sense? Yeah. So earlier this week, like we had one good day, I believe it was Thursday, I increased my account by 20% in one day. It was less than 24 hours. So you can think of the percent, I don't care if it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, that was 20% of my account gains in one day. So most IRAs, most 401ks don't do that in 2 years. So basically, and it just depends. So yeah, to answer your question on calculated risk, it's basically just having a plan, having a structure in place to where, you are risking, but you're not gambling. There's a difference. If I go into the casino and I'm trying to bet the casino, I'm going to lose because, basically the casino knows their odds. They know, okay, we can only let people risk this much before we could lose our winnings. So, they only let you spend a certain amount. I don't know what the exact number is, but they know that if we let anybody gamble more than this much, they could beat us. But nobody ever beats the casino because they know their odds and they know where they need to cut people off at. So it's kind of like that. gambling is definitely not something I would indulge in, but things that I invest in now, I have an account that's basically what I use for my savings account now. And Forward Solutions is my own entity, but we utilize technology and algorithms and expert alerts and all that stuff from a company called Kuvera. So what I do with this account, it trades in the Forex market, but it's algorithm based. So I put my money in, and what it does is basically trade for me, just like the bank does. But I get about a 3 to 6% on average every month. So it's hands-free. I put my money in, and the algorithm trades in the Forex market, and it's been running for about 4 years now, and it's had consistent gains. We've never had a losing day. It does have losing trades, but it's never had a losing day. So that algorithm's running pretty strong.
Do you pull out part of that money, or do you just kind of let it run?
Do I what?
Have you ever pulled out any of that money, or do you just kind of let it run?
I can if I want to, yeah. I did it as a test run when I first got started, but I choose to just keep it in because the more I continue, let me move this sound. The more I continue to compound, basically, the more my percentage is. So I continue to put money in because 3% of 1,000 is a lot more than 3% of 100.
Right.
It's a lot better. So I continue to compound that, and that's another thing I had to learn along the way was compounding. When I first started investing, I think my first $500 I spent on this algorithm account was I was so nervous. I was thinking I was just spending it and I would never see it again. No, my mindset completely changed about a month later when I kept checking it consistently, and I saw small gains, but the fact was I put my money in the bank every day. I spend money on that bank account every day. I spend money for somebody to hold my money, and I'm making what, pennies every year? Yeah, like 0.02% at most. So I took a jump in, and I dove in head first, and I knew I was taking a big leap, but that was the leap that really saved my life because like any motivational, I don't care if it's Tony Robbins or Grant Cardone or whoever you listen to, they're going to tell you entrepreneurs are people who take risks, but they know that there's going to be there's a high ratio for reward later on. You can't fail at something that you don't give up at. You can't. I mean, you can't lose if you don't give up.
And there's always lessons in failure. If you don't see it as a failed, it's really a learning lesson and something that allows you to, or offers a platform for you to grow. And usually, like most entrepreneurs, you have several failed businesses or several failed attempts before you actually get that one opportunity that hits off.
So something I didn't mention was when I was about 19, I had a little brief, it was less than a year, we'll call it a brief period of light in the storm. I started a landscape company. I was 19, I had a pickup truck, and I just went out. I did landscape on and off throughout the years. That was the other thing that was like my only normal job skill that I had throughout the years, in the midst of all the craziness. So I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's start. And I think we ran for we started at the end of the summer, which was a terrible time to start a landscape company. But so we ran through, I think it was 2012, I believe. Went through the summer. The name of the company was called Ground Effects. Came up with a good name. That was about all I came up with. And it was, I wasn't structured yet. I didn't have my bearings in. And not only that, but my financial education was not sound. I recommend before anybody ever starts any sort of business, get your financial education sound, or it's, you don't know where your money's going. I mean, on a regular basis, I budget out, what goes where. And I mean, and the beautiful thing is we have apps for this stuff now. I don't have to write any of this. It's all, I've got an app through the company I work with, and I can take pictures of all my receipts and, calculate the miles I've driven, the time I've spent, at different appointments, different quotes, no matter what, all those things that I've learned, was something that I didn't have at the time with the ground effects company. So yeah, that was probably one of my, and I wouldn't even call it a mistake. It was
It was a
it was an
learning
opportunity.
experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it was something I had opportunity to learn from because that was, and it was eye-opening because for the first time in my life I was like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm my own boss. That was what I wanted for years, and I did it. And it, like I said, it lasted for less than a year. We didn't even start up again the next spring because, and I don't remember why. I don't know if I didn't have advertising, I didn't have guys to work for me or what, but um, I took a jump in and I learned a lot of things from it. So.
And you've consistently mentioned financial education, and having that as a foundation. Do you mind if we go into kind of the basics that people should implement, especially if they're trying to start their own business or they're trying to break away from their day-to-day jobs?
Definitely. So I don't consider myself any sort of investment advisor or anything along those lines. I'm not I don't claim to. I'm here to be a resource. Now, the people that I work with, my mentors on my team, they've been doing this longer than me, but everybody has a mentor. So basically, when it comes to financial education, the things that I've come into contact with, even as far as the basics, we won't even jump into the advanced at this point, but the basics, basically just, budgeting. Budgeting is one.
Do you have an app to budget? Or do you do you have an app that you use, or do you manually budget yourself?
I do, but I don't know why, but I'm kind of old school, so I just choose to like write it all down. It's more tangible if I write it down. It makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
But yes, there's apps out there. I know some banks that basically will do it for you. They tell you, that I saw this thing the other day. There was an ad for an app that you can text your bank and it would tell you, hey, you have this much money to spend for the rest of the week. So that's pretty cool. I mean, the opportunities we have running a business, owning a business, starting a business in today's day and age is we have more opportunity than we've ever had. Everything's so automated. I mean, when I started getting into online business and online marketing and advertising, and there's so many opportunities to make money online, and it's crazy. That's why I can't stand when I hear people talk about, I'm broke, or I need some money, or this and that. 20 years ago, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of scams on the internet, but there's so many opportunities. So, to wrap that back around, budgeting is something I had to learn the hard way. And it's something I have to keep up on. So on a regular basis, I budget out my bills. I budget out, okay, this is what I need to spend every month on bills, and I always round up just to give myself some wiggle room. And if there's money left over, great. Let's put that back in the mix. Let's reinvest it, and being self-employed, my income it's not always the same. It might be less this month. It might be 10 times next month. It just depends. It depends on how much work comes in. And it depends on a lot of things. It depends on how much I invest. Sometimes I invest more than necessary, which, I invest more than I need to, but it's okay because I'm doing it for a good reason.
Right.
Budgeting, saving, investing. Saving was probably my first, they say if you have a savings account, you're technically an investor because you're actually gaining interest on that money. I recommend anybody have a bank account before you dive in. That was one big step I took. I was always real old-fashioned. I didn't like banks, and I still am not a huge fan of them, but I got a bank account. I always had cash. I'd have cash just stashed around the house. Like, that's a terrible idea. So I got a bank account. I started saving, and that was a good feeling, like having money put aside that I knew was like, okay, it's this emergency fund, like we're okay. Especially when my daughter was born. I mean, I had a goal at the time when my daughter was born, like, okay, I need to have at least 10 grand set aside in the bank just for whatever. Well, I was close, let's say that, but I knew, like, I was hyper paranoid too. I wanted everything to be completely perfect when she got here, and I wanted to make sure there was no reason to worry because I knew I was going to take off work for a little bit, and I not to mention, I think the month after she was born, we didn't have but like 2 small jobs, so it played out right. So, budgeting, saving, and when I opened my eyes to investing, whether it be with crypto or Forex, or I don't care if whatever else you choose to invest in, those are just the things I choose to invest in. That basically was something I needed to continue to research because, and I continue to learn about it all the time. You have to know that, okay, going into this, they tell you anytime you invest, know that that is money you're willing to get rid of,
Right.
because yes, in any investment, there's always an opportunity that, you invest in a startup company, well, they blow up, well, you just lost your investment. I don't care if you invest in stocks. Stocks were the first thing I invested in. Stock market crashes, you lose all that money. No matter what, there's always going to be risk in investment, but I mean, I invested in tangible, we'll call them commodities when I was younger. And, but I knew like, okay, as long as I get my return back on these, I'll be okay. If I can flip this, if I can double my money, it just has to be calculated no matter what it is. So
it would be budgeting, savings, and investment. And then from what you've mentioned previously, so about 30% in savings, 30% in investing. And then as you budget, I guess that's where you would kind of calculate to see how much you would need
how much
for your bill.
are.
Give yourself some wiggle room, and then try to have that 30% if it's possible. If not, then it's a goal that they can work up to.
Definitely. And, see, that, like I said, that's just me. I mean, some people can invest more, you can invest less. It all just depends on, what your personal expenses are, what your personal, some people go out more. Some people spend more money on entertainment. Some people choose to, like, I'm pretty frugal about everything I do. We don't go out a lot. Which, if we do, I make sure, like, okay, I'm not going to miss this money. Like, it's okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
And it's helped a lot. By no means do I sacrifice fun and enjoyment for, being a tightwad. I mean, I know what I'm working toward, and my fiance, she understands that as well. In the beginning it was tough, but she now sees, like, okay, we know what we're working towards because she's seen consistent progress, consistent gains, and so I sacrifice, maybe going out to eat tonight for a house next year. I have goals, and I'm working toward those goals, and those are things that I'm not going to give up on. So
thank you, Barry. I love your comments. And thank you to the World of Life. I don't know if you're still there. I saw the hearts. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to also chime in. And then just to kind of go back, Alex, if you could go back to that 15, 13-year-old and give yourself a piece of advice, what do you think that you would tell that boy?
I would have told him to. That's a good question. I would have told him to seek out the millionaire and do what he's doing. I wish I could have found the technology that I use today to invest, because not only do I gain the 3 to 6% a month, but that's just one account. I trade Forex on a regular basis, and that's the gains on that are phenomenal. We didn't. Bitcoin came out in 2009, so let's see, I would have been, I think I just started high school, so, if I had have found it then, if I could tell my 15-year-old self what to do, I would have said, hey, go throw $100 in Bitcoin, because it skyrocketed over the next 10 years. And there's still people to this day that are real skeptical about cryptocurrency, and that's fine, but I did my homework. I was always really skeptical. Getting into this new aspect of life, this new lifestyle, I was skeptical because of the people I used to surround myself with. I didn't trust anybody. So when I started to meet new people who actually were genuine and who I could trust and who were actually interested in my well-being and help watching me succeed, that really changed my I guess you could say it changed my heart, because that helped me, like they say, like you feel better, you do better. So it helped me view other people differently too. And, obviously any sort of skepticism going into anything you don't know about is that's okay. I mean, that's normal. But I did my homework and I learned about these things. I learned about Forex, I learned about crypto, and I learned about stocks, and and I did the research on Kuvera, and I did the research on the company that I'm working with, and how everything works. And I learned that they were a publicly traded company. I learned that they had the track record that I was willing to take a shot at, because I had invested in things in my past that were maybe not, the reward ratio wasn't very high, but I figured out something that had worked for me, and I found an opportunity that I was like, okay, this is great. So between entrepreneurship and financial education, if I can spread that to other people and just help with, even starting off with the basics and moving into the more advanced training, anything anybody wants to get involved with, in today's day and age, being an entrepreneur is definitely a solid move.
I just got a pop-up, so it looks like we have about 1 minute and 24 seconds remaining on Instagram. Okay. So just to wrap up, if there's anything that you want to leave somebody with, a message to someone that's going through what you went through with addiction, or who is homeless, or who is trying to start their own business, what's one message that you want to leave them with?
Yeah, definitely. If I had to say, to summarize, if I would say, the most important thing, anybody paying attention who may need to hear something positive, don't give up, man. Find something solid, find something that you're passionate about, and go for it. Don't listen to anything anybody else tells you as far as, it won't happen, it's not possible, because it is possible. And if I can do it, I promise anybody can. I'm telling you, don't give up. That's the biggest thing. Stay patient, focus on your goals, and don't give up, and just push on through.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate you having me out here.
Thank you. I'll make sure to link to all of Alex's social media pages, his website, and then we'll include all of the information that we went through here. Thank you so much for joining, guys.
Yep, I'll see you again soon, Natalie.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.